Hello, and thank you for having me here today. My name is Sonya Simmons, and I'm excited to share with you the results of my research study on subordinates' perceptions of gender leadership in the workplace. Will women bosses ever be as good as men bosses? Women have been in the workplace for decades, but their rise to leadership positions has been slow. Is the leadership landscape finally changing? Do masculine and feminine leadership characteristics matter in a boss? I created this study to determine how women leaders in the workplace are perceived in comparison to their male counterparts. The studies in my literature review address leadership styles that focused on feminine leadership qualities and the comparison of leadership characteristics of transactional versus transformational, authoritarian or directive versus participative, and relational versus task oriented. There are studies on leadership perceptions based on physical characteristics. The two in my literature review examine the perceptions of the advantage of height in men and women leaders and voice pitch and how it affects perceptions of competence and leadership in male and female leaders. And then there are studies that simply ask the sample groups about their preferences in men or women bosses or leaders. The study was conducted with a convenient sample of 132 people, 88 male and 88 female and 44 male participants. The participants were randomly assigned to read one of two identical workplace scenarios, with the only difference being the gender of the boss. They were asked to rate the boss's leadership qualities on a scale of 1 to 5. The leadership qualities used in the survey questions are the feminine characterized traits just, fair, team building, and motivational, and the masculine characterized traits competitive, assertive, and ambitious. There were 86 respondents for the male boss and 46 respondents for the female boss. My study set out to examine whether the male and female authority figures in business are perceived differently by their subordinates. And the hypothesis was that the male boss would be perceived as a better leader or have higher leadership scores than the female boss. But the hypothesis was not supported. A t-test comparing the means of two independent samples, the male boss and the female boss, was performed to determine statistical significance. In my identical scenarios, the male and female bosses were scored relatively equally in each leadership characteristic, with the exception of the feminine leadership style of team building, in which the female boss scored higher than the male boss. But interestingly, using the mean scores of all the leadership characteristics combined, the female boss scored higher in overall leadership qualities than the male boss, which clearly disproved the hypothesis. There are many reasons people may prefer one gender boss over another, but once preconceived notions are eliminated, women are perceived to exhibit more leader like qualities than men. They scored higher in the feminine leadership quality of team building and also in overall leadership qualities. Limitations were identified. While the study has shown that leadership qualities in female leaders are recognized by subordinates, it does not make clear whether women with obvious leadership qualities are perceived as favorably as male leaders. The size and scope of the sample group of the study is limiting, and a third vignette with the control condition of a non-gendered boss would be helpful to compare the results. Future studies about gendered leadership perceptions should attempt to determine the value placed on the leadership characteristics in women and men to pinpoint the positive or negative feelings associated with that characteristic in that individual. To elaborate on specific leadership qualities that are consistently negatively identified in female leaders, such as transformational characteristics in female leaders, as identified in Amen, Korbick, and Morrison's study. With the focus on women rising to leadership positions, rather than examining subordinates' perceptions of their leaders, it may be valuable to explore how leaders perceive and what they value in their peers. They are often in the unique position to select their peers. The Amen study, previously mentioned, allowed for leader self-scoring. A future study to determine how they perceive one another on the same organizational level may help see invisible barriers that cause female candidates to be passed over. The workforce leadership landscape is changing, and continued attention to the conscious or subconscious motivations that have kept women out of top leadership positions can only help shed light and bring equality to the women who choose to pursue upward career paths. Thank you so much for allowing me some time to present to you today.